one of those people who have a different perspective than many on the efficacy of Harry Reid over the years. And part of that is because I think I know many people who worked for him and who were, I think, were skeptical going in and coming out had a different perspective in terms of what was going on behind the scenes. He was typically not a guy who would go out there, and I think, I mean, he's not, let's face it, he's not a charismatic guy, at least when you see him on television. And I think he was aware of that, and there was very few times where he would, but, he was the guy who basically came out and said, Mitt Romney's, I mean, he was willing to do things from a political standpoint. He was willing to fight very hard. And sometimes, to use the boxing analogy, he's a boxer. Sometimes he had what seemed to be a dubious article embedded in his boxing glove. In terms of he was more interested in winning, I think, in certain instances than he was in maintaining certain decorums. So he released a statement this morning on Donald Trump. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a little bit long to read, but I'm going to just select portions so you get the idea of it. I've heard many stories. I've heard more stories in the past 48 hours of Americans living in fear of their own government and their fellow Americans that I can remember hearing in 5 decades in politics. It's the first paragraph. And he talks about Hispanic Americans, African Americans, Muslim Americans, immigrants. Right, so I have a large family. I have 1 daughter and 12 granddaughters. The text, emails, phone calls I've received from them have been filled with fear for themselves, their Hispanic and African American friends, for their Muslim and Jewish friends, for their LGBT friends, for their Asian friends. I felt their tears and I felt their fear. Third paragraph. We as a nation must find a way to move forward without consigning those who Trump has threatened to the shadows. Their fear is entirely rational, because Donald Trump has talked openly about doing terrible things to them. He goes on, but let me skip to the final 4th paragraph. If this is going to be a time of healing, remember now, he's putting this out after Barack Obama has sat down and acted very jovial with Donald Trump. And Clinton has given her speech. And the pundits have all talked about this. If this is going to be a time of healing, we must first put the responsibility for healing where it belongs, at the feet of Donald Trump, a sexual predator who lost the popular vote and fueled his campaign with bigotry and hate. Winning the Electoral College does not absolve Trump of his grave sins he committed against millions of Americans. Donald Trump may not possess the capacity to assuage those fears, but he owes it to this nation to try. That's what you do, folks, when you're Harry Reid. I mean, that's the classic Harry Reid paragraph. It is basically sticking the knife in, spinning it around, and then pointing to it and saying, see that lovely handle on that knife? I think embedded in that last paragraph are his, are some talking points that I think are helpful. Reminding people he did not win the majority of American votes. Reminding people that even though he's the president-elect right now, he's still a sexual predator, an admitted sexual predator. Reminding people that even though he will be the president, that it is built on bigotry and hate. And remind people that every single day. And I think, this is a guy who has respect for the institutions of America. He's been a senator. But he also understands that, like, these institutions are set up to maintain a certain baseline in this country. And when that baseline gets blown away, you don't just keep holding on to the institutions and the processes. That's putting the cart behind the in front of the horse, and then trying to go sideways. Just to extend the metaphor. I mean, there are times where processes and respect for institutions get in the way of what they were set up to do in the first place. That's important to remember. Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Subscribe.